even 60s, right? India had just become independent and it was trying to stand up on its feet as a country. The 2 decades went by just to kind of get it into motion. Most of the time, which our earlier generation, our parents spent, was towards sustaining and surviving. The basics of food, clothing, shelter. They didn't have much time and bandwidth to kind of go within and ask themselves as to who they are. And then came in our generation. Our generation is mostly considered to be a rebel generation. In the sense, we kind of didn't adhere to the old patterns, old traditions, and we kind of tried to break those traditions and live life from a very free space, a mentally free space. And the next generation which came, which is your generation, is a generation which is born with a silver spoon.
Yeah.
If I may say. There's been a lot of free space for you to explore. Freedom and free space to explore for your generation is what I feel. Also, I feel that your generation is not been able to handle it very maturely. The freedom that came in.
Welcome to another section.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is we're gonna do different segments, obviously, on each topic, which is easier to grasp and also completely contained within itself.
Right.
But all part of the larger season that we are doing. And okay, so we're gonna talk about problems that we face as people, right? Especially, we can talk about our generation, and we can talk about your generation and the generation before that. The three generations that we sort of deal with in the day-to-day life, like grandparents, parents, and us. Well, for us. So what sort of problems did they have compared to what sort of problems did you have, mentally speaking, or just mental challenges, or even societal challenges? And what sort of problems are we having in context of spirituality and following or clearing the inner space to the point where you can live out your natural rhythm in life, you know?
So if I may paraphrase your question, I think it's what kind of problems did each of the generations have
Yeah.
or still have in your case,
Correct.
or in our case, and even the
Yeah.
other, in the context of spirituality.
In the context of spirituality and mental health.
So what I've seen is that, so we'll start with the earlier generation before me,
Best.
my parents' generation. Right?
Best.
They were young when it was, I think, around 70s. Like, they were young adults.
Yeah.
And at that point of time, and I'm talking from an Indian context. Are you looking at from an Indian
context?
Indian context, right?
Context.
So for an Indian context, when people in their 70s or 80s, even 60s, right? India had just become independent and it was trying to stand up on its feet as a country. So the 2 decades went by just to kind of get it into motion or get things moving and get structures in place, systems in place. So they already were in place, but to kind of refine them and kind of also do it yourself rather than because British were handling it, right? Now we had to handle it ourselves.
Correct.
So I think that was a journey which happened. And then, so India was moving into a space of being independent, but at the same time was carrying a lot of baggage from the previous regime, if I may say. Also, the economic status of the country and the economic level of a normal resident or a normal citizen of India was very low. Most of us used to have a very lower than middle class or a poor lifestyle. So there was always a struggle back then to earn resources, to earn financial resources. And then most of the time, which our earlier generation, our parents spent, was towards sustaining and surviving. A lot of mind space, energy went into the basics of food, clothing, shelter. Right? And a lot of energy was spent towards ensuring safety and sustenance of the entire family. And back then, families were large. each parent had 5 or 6 children, right? Family planning was not a big thing, at least in our grandparents' thing. In our parents' lives, it was still 2 children. I think they had come down to 2 children. But then, since they had so many siblings and parents to look after, and it was a huge family for most of our parents. So there were a lot of family dynamics that happened.
Correct.
Plus, lack of financial resources, trying to get your bread and earning. So it was all a very struggle. It was all a very financial struggle, emotional struggle. And in this process, they didn't have much time and bandwidth to kind of go within and ask themselves as to who they are.
Correct.
So their spiritual life was fairly restricted to the religious rituals and practices back then. And then came in our generation. Our generation is mostly considered to be a rebel generation. In the sense, we kind of didn't adhere to the old patterns, old traditions, and we kind of tried to break those traditions and live life from a very free space, if I may say, mentally free space, right? So break the norms, basically, right? And the next generation which came in, which is your generation, that is a generation which is born with a silver spoon, if I may say. And not everybody. Not everybody. This I'm talking about the city crowd.
I understand.
And this is hardly 5%. Still, people in the generation after you and thereafter, 2 generations below you, are still very poor. Most of them in rural areas, right? There are a lot of them, even in urban areas, urban slums. There are a lot of children who are like 5 years of age, 7 years of age, and they don't get nutritious meal even 2 times in India, right? So that's the economic side of it. But economic and spiritual are very closely linked. I'm able to do what I'm doing now because my financial requirements are kind of, in a large way, taken care of by the Creator. So I'm able to kind of do what I really feel like doing. In the same way, with your generation, right? 2 things have happened. There's been a lot of free space for you to explore, which is why, if you look at it, you guys are taking up vocations and professions which were not there earlier, which is the Gen Y. Somebody's becoming a videographer, somebody's becoming a video editor, somebody's becoming a graphic designer, and all of that, which was not there earlier, right? This is all IT related things. Correct. So there's a lot of freedom and free space to explore for your generation, is what I feel. Also, I feel that your generation is not been able to handle it very maturely, the freedom that came in. It's not something specific to you or any specific individual. Overall, I'm saying. It's a generation. Right? Despite being born with a silver spoon, I think the lack of appreciation of the opportunity that they have to do something which is their inner calling and to follow their calling and excel at it. I think that's been missing. And for most vast majority, there are exceptions still out there. But by and large, right, from a very spiritual perspective, your generation is beautiful in the sense they're more loving, they're more caring, and there are exceptions again. But by and large, the awareness level is very high, intrinsically by birth, because you're lighter beings, and more love, more care, and less of hate, less of hurting others, more of collaboration, more of working together. And that's what I see in your generation. Whereas in early generations, the one before, it was all cutthroat competition. And our generation also, it was not cutthroat competition, but there was a space of one-upmanship. But in your generation, I think that's kind of...
It's less competition.
More collaboration is what I sense and I see. But you're the right person because you're part of that generation. You deal with that on a regular basis. I also, but the way they connect with me would be different from the way they connect with you, correct? Because you're part of that ecosystem.
I guess so. This is very much in line with how I saw the 3 generations too, is the grandparents, they had to set up, make a life, coming to the city, and so they didn't have much time to look within, and mental health wasn't even a concept back then. So it was deeply affecting for them.
Correct.
So it,
Correct.
but they really, that it's one of the greatest things for me is that you guys just pushed through. No matter what, you just made it happen, and that's the beauty of it. I think that the fact that India has come to a prosperous state is because of your generation and the generation before that, both. Um, I mean, your generation has taken it a step further.
Correct. Correct.
It stood on their shoulders
Correct.
and lifted it
Correct.
up.
Correct.
Uh,
I totally agree with you.
and you had relatively more space.
Correct.
And relatively more
Opportunity to study.
And much more awareness in terms of it's like a global
Right.
awareness
Right.
towards things.
Right.
Because there's increasing communication and
In 1990s, liberation
Yeah.
happened.
yeah, exactly.
The
But
economy opened up.
economy
IT
opened
came
up.
in.
Yeah, ID
IT
came
came
in.
in.
That's exactly. So you guys definitely, but it was still very difficult for your generation to pull through all of
Yeah.
it.
Correct.
Whereas my generation is, I mean, I know you're saying silver spoon, but we have our own
Yeah, you have your own.
own set of. So we were born into the globalized world,
Correct.
right?
Correct.
And with that comes its own set of
Challenges.
Like I said, everything's given to us on a platter, but sustaining it was very difficult because our generation identifies with the idea that there is no inherent meaning to life. We're just a random bag of like atoms, and I think that idea is like sort of tied into our psyche so deeply, which is why it's so difficult for us to make sense of why we are doing anything in the first place.
Is it specific to you or generally?
I think it's a general thing. I've seen a lot of my friends feel like this, but they don't address it. They don't even know that they feel like this.
Right.
But they do feel that that there's a lack of there's no integral value or meaning to life. We just sort of randomly happened. Earth happened, we happened, humans happened. It's all evolution. There's no reason for us to be here, which is why I think spirituality is so important for our generation, which is why I also think a lot of our generation is waking up to that. Because in search of, so we do something and then we realize this is not worth doing. Then we jump to something else. Then we jump to something else. We've tasted a bunch of things. None of it is worth doing. So, and none of it is giving us inherent meaning or value in our lives, which makes us even more depressed. Now, the other thing that adds to this whole thing is internet and social media. That we can talk about that later on. But the amount of exposure to various people who've already set up their lives in comfortable, almost pleasurable settings in their life, and whereas some people, my generation, who are much more passionate about certain subjects but don't have the financial skills to set up their life in that way, that they face a lot of problems, and they almost constantly are torn apart by wanting a better life, and then wanting a much more free life in relation to finances and surviving and all that. But at the same time, they also want the luxuries. They also want the good aspects of material life, and they're sort of conflicted between this, and it sort of keeps them at like a standstill. It's difficult for them to move ahead.
Right.
And I think as we grew up, this idea that we have to save water, save the world, save paper, save trees, all these things are incorporated into our minds from childhood. So it was easier for us to digest those concepts, but at the same time, we don't have the mental free space to deal with this on a day-to-day basis, which is why it gets difficult to
live those concepts.
Yes. So that's what I think. But like I said, that is why it's so important for our generation, because to learn about spirituality, because spirituality gives that inherent meaning and value. Once you go through that experience of the enlightenment or epiphany that gives you like a total understanding, a oneness with everything, then you will automatically know your place in life. You'll automatically know what you can offer,
And what's
yeah. So that's what I think. That is why we started this in the first place, especially for my generation. Seeing people on the social media platforms and seeing their own lives and comparing it really puts them at a depressive state and makes them really anxious, makes them almost suicidal. I know one of my friends' friend just committed suicide because she could not handle the pressure that comes with just downright meaningless existence. Yeah. So it is mix of like depression, mix of not knowing what to do, not knowing, feeling like there's no meaning to anything, feeling like
So that's an interesting point actually. I wanted to ask you to understand better as to why does the generation feel, or why do people in your generation feel that there is no meaning to life? Is it because they lack goals? Is it because because their financials are taken care of? They don't have tangible things to work for or work towards or look up to? Or is it like they're born with a silver spoon, so their basics are taken care of, family takes care of it, so they don't need to focus on that? So which is why they feel aimless? Or
I know it seems like that.
No, I'm asking you.
Yeah. But it generally seems like that, right?
No, I don't know if it's true or not.
I don't think it is.
Right.
But
so what is the source for them to feel
a lack of
aimless?
meaning?
Yeah, lack of meaning.
To a large extent, I think it is modern science. Because modern science could not... What it showed us, what we grew up learning, is that we are made of a bunch of atoms. They inherently have nothing. They're just forces of nature acting upon each other with electrical charges. So that idea of such randomness, from that we got that from material science, which is why material science is so limiting, and which is why it is so it really doesn't help in terms of understanding the whole thing, because there's no complete knowledge yet. Now, the thing is, if we are just random collection of atoms and we are randomly placed on this planet, there's no such thing as soul. We have to think about everything through logic. And if we see it that way, then there is no meaning. We have to select our own meaning. And that's what we grew up learning also, is to find a meaning and seize it, right? Seize the day. You pick one thing that you like doing and just do it.
But isn't that beautiful that you do something that you love doing?
From a different perspective, yes. If we see it as there's no meaning to anything, and I have to find meaning in this, and at the end, it takes a lot of effort and a lot of and it takes a lot of amount of stress that you have to digest to put this out there. Then it gets difficult. Then you feel like, why am I doing this at all in the first place? And you start to have all these inherently deep questions that our mind generates automatically. These questions of who am I, why am I doing this, what is the point of all of this, what is the reason? All these deep questions we've been asking for God knows how long, but we still have no answers for these things. Especially in the common knowledge, there are exceptions and there is answers to these things, and the answer of it is never in a word or a sentence or some online forum. The answer is in experience. Yeah. So I think that not knowing this is not knowing that there are answers to this, not knowing that you can find it, is one problem. And because you're not able to find it, there's a lot of depression and there's a lot of anxiety. And because you just don't know. Everything is so random that what we call it as crisis of meaning. It's that's what this whole thing is. What I was trying to describe is crisis of meaning is what our generation is sort of going through. Is we don't have inherent meaning and value, and our fears have reached a global scale now with the environment getting destroyed, the nuclear holocaust. There's a possibility of nuclear a war. So the crisis of meaning and the fear that has reached a global stage, both these sort of play into each other because there's so much fear about what's going to happen, and at the same time we don't have any means to find meaning and value in our lives. Our generation has come to a standstill. Now, I think it's worth mentioning that this is coming from a majorly Western point of view. And I do think that our previous generation, like my older cousins from ever since the 90s, and my generation, both of us are heavily influenced by the Western culture. And right now, I think the West is going through like a crisis of sorts in terms of all this. The fear is like fear of what is going to happen in the future is running wild. And obviously, in India, the 5% of the nation that has their requirements and everything met, the top 5%, they are the ones who tend to be more in sync with this sort of understanding, this sort of thinking, especially I'm talking from a socioeconomic background, as compared to other socioeconomic, like India 2 and India 3, they are much more shielded from this sort of thinking because of the kind of exposure and the kind of communities they live in. And but I do think that this sort of thinking is trickling into their psyche too. If not now, it is going to. What I did want to mention was 3 years before, I was an atheist. I did not believe in God or anything. And that I had a very different mindset because of it. Because science was my religion, though I didn't know that that's what I kept it at. Everything was about logic and all of that. So, and what science taught was we're just random happening in the universe. There's no force driving all of this. At least science hadn't figured it out. And as long as science hadn't figured it out and science hasn't proved it, that means it doesn't exist. That's how we saw it, right? And because of that thinking, because of the randomness of it, the crisis of meaning happened, and because of the crisis of meaning and the globalized fear, this sort of deep-rooted depression and anxiety has crept into our lives. And because of that, what happened was, there's two ways to deal with this. One is you succumb to that, or the other one is you completely shun it and you go live your life. If you succumb to it, you obviously won't get off the bed, and it will be very difficult for you to function. But if you just shun it and you just go live your life, anything goes after that point. You could just go enjoy life. Live in the moment is understood in a very different context at that point. Living in the moment is you do whatever you feel like. Nothing constructive. Sometimes, or most of the times, you just if you have to go drink, you drink. You want to go party, you party. And because of that, there's a fear of commitment that also creeps in. Because of that, you don't tend to have longer relationships. So this is where that direction would go if you just shun this whole idea of not having any meaning to it. But what shifted the whole thing for me is
how is like the relationship part connected to this? Like in the sense,
so because we were
part.
because there's no meaning to anything, so nothing matters. So because nothing matters, committing to anything is a huge, it's like tying you down, right? And no strings attached is our generation's way of living. It's don't let anything hold you down, being free. So that translates into relationships too, mostly in the West, but also it's slowly happening in urban India right now. So because of that, you are not interested in commitment to any relationship or any person, and because of that, you tend to have to live in relationships or one night stands or what not before, and marriage is considered a very big step, if you can even take one, that is. So that's how it's connected to relationships. Did I answer that question? Okay. What happened to me was what made the shift was, like I said, 3 years ago I was an atheist, and because of that, living in a extremely religious country, like I wouldn't say extremely, but we are very religious. It's our way of living in India, was to an extent embarrassing. To an extent, I would just be questioning it. I would be making fun of it. I would also be, at the same time, I would also be questioning it. But I think that is more me than any of my peers. I think my interest in this subject was forever. It's just I didn't see it that way. I was seeing it as like, what are these people doing? But once it made sense, then I started valuing what I've inherently always had, which was my language, my traditions, and what it all meant. And I delved much deeper into it. My language, which is Telugu, has deep-rooted connections, and is very similar to Sanskrit, which is why even now when I listen to some of the mantras or anything, some of the words I can make out from Sanskrit, which is very nice. Only after finding spirituality was I able to embrace my side of life, embrace what I always was, which is a huge part of me, which is in fact the complete part of me. I never left India and stayed outside. So I was able to embrace that huge side of me, and at the same time I was able to not just see value in it, but also see how it can help my life in the future, in the present and in the future, and how it can help various people and around me also. Though it's difficult for some people to get around such concepts still. So, yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
That was nice. I'll tell you where that fear comes from. Why is the person scared? Why are you scared? It's the fear of unknown. You don't know what this journey entails. Your mind doesn't know what this journey entails. A. B. Even your family doesn't know this. Especially if you're married and have children and a spouse, and if they've not gone through the journey, or your parents have not gone through the journey, then they're very scared for you as to what are you getting into. Correct. And they discourage you if they are not in awareness.
Correct.
And their fear is that you might lose touch with the worldly life and you will completely become a monk or renounce the worldly life, leave everything. And that's the fear which people have, right? And family members have. That adds to the complication, that adds to the inner challenge which is going on in the person. This adds an external element which further complicates the matter for the person and further makes it difficult for the person to walk on the path.